The second in our trio of circuits that are new to this series is Magny-Cours. And while Tixier was able to capitalize on his experience in Australian supercars at Sandown, will he have similar experience here with him being French? We'll see if our points leader can maintain the momentum as we get ready to watch round 5 of the Lotus 49 Grand Prix Legend Series. And you'll see it all live here on the Global Sim Racing channel. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is IMSA driver Joey Atterbury. Behind the scenes is our director, Robert O'Brien, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. This place is one of the newest additions to iRacing, so why don't we head on down to our track guide to get more familiar with it. Welcome to Circuit de Magny-Cours. Located about 3 hours south of Paris, the track is most famous for its nearly 2 decades of hosting the French Grand Prix. But it has seen a variety of open-wheel series, sports cars, and motorcycles compete during its history. With about 4.5 kilometers in length, or just under 3 miles, its 17 turns wind back and forth between a series of hairpins and chicanes. Notably, a few of the turns are modeled after famous corners from other tracks. Estoril's long, sweeping opening to the lap provides a serious challenge to kick things off. Then, the flat-out run up to Adelaide tests your precision with braking by smacking you in the face with the slowest corner on the track. Later, the Nürburgring and Imola chicanes do little to slow the car, but forces you to thread the needle on your way towards 2 other tight hairpins. But there are other notable turns that are unique to the circuit. The Grand Courbe is the first you must tackle and is a swift double apexer that blends directly into Estoril. This means that any attempts at an overtake there are going to require some serious bravery. Château d'Eau will test your throttle control as the radius opens up and needs a good exit to make sure you aren't vulnerable on the run down to Lissay. The reputation of this track tells you to expect overtakes to be difficult, but a little aggression and some good braking should give you opportunities. All in all, after more than 60 years, French race fans have embraced this staple of motorsport in the country. Well, there's a quick glance at this place, but we, of course, will bring the Lotus 49s here for the first time, Joey, which should be interesting with all the little fast kinks in it.
It'll be an interesting racetrack for these cars because there's some very good passing opportunities, but it's tricky getting there, especially through turns 3, this long sweeping corner. With tire temperature, it's crucial to get the car turned because it leads down into turn 5, Adelaide, which is one of the largest passing opportunities that we'll see. Another tricky section is headed into the turn 12-13 Imola chicane there. It gets really narrow on entry and coming out of 14, which is Chateau d'Eau. It looks like it's pretty narrow coming out, and cars pretty much have to park it at the apex, straighten up the exit to get on the throttle. It's going to be interesting to see how all of these racers navigate this course for the first time in competition.
Absolutely. And as those drivers get ready, we're going to take a glance at the point situation. Tixier currently on top, but only by 5 points over Nieva. Now, Sebastian managed to take the win last time, but Nieva has yet to win. In fact, I think he's only nabbed 1 podium this season, but he's just been so darn consistent compared to everybody else. Now, that's before the drop weeks. So Mick Claridge, who has been pretty fast but missed last time out in Australia, has fallen down to 3rd. He'll probably jump back up once they start counting those drop weeks. It stayed very, very tight between Mick, David, John Olsen, and Bill Tyler, as well as Neil Kemp down there. Just barely less than 20 points between all of them fighting for that 3rd position. But, of course, we also have the F2 Championship. Let's take a glance at that.
The F2 Championship is, of course, just separated by iRacing from the F1 drivers, and leading the way currently is Timothy Porter, but you see really just these top 3 competitors packed very tightly. Jan Steffen just 4 points behind, Glenn Becker 6 points behind them, and then Douglas Nelson in the 4th spot, only 10 points back from the lead. Also, that very familiar name, Don Peak, there tied in the current 5th position with Jeff Saunders, and see everyone else from there on back just kind of getting going right now with only 4 rounds done of this 12-week season.
Indeed. Now, as for the Nations Cup, United States just barely ahead of Spain and United Kingdom on this one. Very much a 3-way fight up at the front. Singapore jumping up to 4th, thanks to Tixier, and trying to see if he can get into the fray. But Australia just kind of hovering around behind them currently. Then you get a bit of a jump back down to Finland in 6th position, where you've got a fight between 7th, 8th, and 9th. Denmark, Germany, and Canada kind of vying for those lower positions amongst the top 10, and Norway rounds them out. Ove Traingrade been having a very up and down season, unfortunately, up till now. Joey, why don't you get us up to speed on the race details?
We mentioned it. It is round 5 of 12 here this series. 20 laps here at Magny-Cours. Open setups, which means all of the competitors have been tweaking and tuning on their setups. There's that community provided one as well. No spare car, so it's crucial not to pick up any damage on the racetrack. Drive-through penalty at 17x, disqualification at 25. I don't think we're going to see that today, but it will be interesting because if you overstep the limit in the brake zone, pretty easy to run off track here, and some of these chicanes funnel back into the racetrack, which can potentially cause big accidents.
Yeah, we've seen it the couple times that we've had shows here already, and there you can see how tricky it is out of Imola up into Chateau d'Eau, and Tixier is trying to get his first lap down. Olsen is the first driver to put a lap in, though, and the marker is a 38.1, so everybody else trying to follow in, and quickly some are besting him. Kemp, Watson, looks like Traingrade wasn't able to go any faster, but what about Tixier? Crosses the line, 37.8. That is going to be good enough for pole.
Currently provisional pole. Richard Watson slips in there at a 37.9. The rest of the field is just starting to really put down the laps right now. We're riding on board with Mick Claridge here as he's heading down the straightaway. This is down into the turn 5 hairpin, the heaviest brake zone that we see, and you see how slow he's really got to get that car woed down there.
He has not set a first lap yet, so I think this is his first flyer right now that he's on. Looks like Richard Watson still remains in second provisionally behind Tixier. Wade Sheedy, who was doing very well before his damage back at Sandown, is up into third. Let's see if he can redeem himself today all the way to the finish. There's Watson on your screen, currently coming down up to Imola himself, and this is where you can really get a sense of one of the few places that you have any sort of elevation change around here.
And you see how narrow some of the entries to these chicanes can be. I'd be curious to see how the competitors navigate this racetrack today. And Joe, looking at time and scoring, there's a lot of cars on fast laps between Richard Watson, who we're riding on board with, Sebastian Tixier. I know Laust Olsen is also on a flyer.
Oh, John Olsen just managed to jump up into second and was only half a tenth off of Tixier. Still, that's front row. Laust Olsen is now up on the pole position. Will Tixier be able to respond? He's going to be coming across here in a second. No, his lap is deleted. Tixier will have to start from fourth. Nieva, though, is onto the front row now. Jorge Nieva continuing to pick it up. And I got to say, it's been very cool seeing both Nieva and now Rossi have jumped up from the F2 championship to F1 and actually are quite competitive.
It's always good to see the natural progression of things. Here's Ove Traingrade jumping up from F2 to F1. The cars are the same. Technically, the competitors are the same. The only difference is the iRating on paper, and it's good to see the competitors move up and challenge themselves even more.
Wade Sheedy goes quicker, but is only good enough for 6th. Right now, it's Neil Kemp on the inside of row 2. He's finished his qualifying. What about Bill Tyler here? It looks like he jumps up to 8th on that second lap. We're just missing a few. Actually, Mick Claridge looks like he had an off track on his first lap, so that got deleted. And the number 2 car really needs to get a good time in.
Yeah, we're used to seeing Mick Claridge really start at the front of this field, and you mentioned that he needs to be able to put a time in that's good because we've got 40-some cars here today, and that's going to be a lot of traffic, and here he comes, going to be coming through the final chicane. Same with Xavier Sanchez, almost identical of where they are on track. We'll have to see. Xavier Sanchez jumps up into third place. Here comes Mick Claridge across the line. Pole for the number 2 car.
Wow. And by almost half a second. What's interesting is that Tixier is claiming that if it wasn't for his spin right at the end, it would have been a clean lap, and he was going for about a 37 flat which would have been very close to Claridge, but instead he's been relegated to the outside of the third row. Rodriguez here has finished both of his laps, so he's just getting some practice in from this point. And double checking, I think that is everybody able to set a lap from here because, 30 seconds left. There's nobody who has a second lap left that can reach the grid in time. So, going to be Mick Claridge on the pole and Laus Stolsen starting second with Jorge Nieva in P3. Fantastic for him up there. Xavier Sanchez starts fourth, followed by Neil Kemp in P5. Tixier in sixth, followed by Richard Watson on the inside of the next row. It'll be Wade Sheedy starting eighth. Then it's John Olson in P9, and Bill Tyler rounds out your top 10.
Ben Zocco in the 11th spot. I saw there was a lot of speed in Ben Zocco's car, so we'll have to keep an eye on him. Ove Trengrade starting in the 12th position, Gary Ho 13th, David Rossi, Mark Antonio Lopez Salgado rounding out the top 15. Michael Grissinger, Robert Prumley, Gary Quellen, Farron Grau, and Glenn Becker in the 20th position.
When you get down to 21st, it's Paul Wilson, followed by Christian Eschner. Ernesto Romero starts 23rd, followed by Rolly Wallbank in 24th. Cam Porter, P25 today. Tobias Harnvey, 26, and Jeff Saunders in 27th. Then it's Jan Lehman and Bjorn Ackman, 28th and 29th. 30th goes to Jon Rodriguez.
Robert Pengrazi, 31st. Jan Steffen, Gabriel Montiel, Steve Morris, Andre Eng, Yuri Giesen, and a lot of these cars did not put down a lap time. Jack Spickett, Brad Cathcart, Mats Linden, Don Peake, Douglas Nelson, Robert Reynolds, and Simone Pancri out there.
All right, drivers are gridding up, and we should be going in just a moment as we're waiting on the last of them. It's a pretty cool day out there, only 66 Fahrenheit on the track surface. So they're going to have to try and get them up to temp as well as they can. And then it's going to bleed right into Grand Curb. So the drivers will have to try and find the grip, and then switching right back into what you heard Joey talk about with Estoril just being a long, long, long corner. They're heading back around. So hopefully everybody is able to adapt quickly, because it's going to be a little bit tight as everybody shuffles around looking for the racing line. Looks like they are all there and ready to go as the engines start to rev and the lights come up. Green flag is out, and coming off the line, Claridge is very good compared to Nieva, who absolutely goes nowhere, and someone wrecks at the very front. It looks like that was Neil Kemp. This is causing a number of cars to have to scatter. It looks like we're seeing more accidents because of that. We'll have to go back and check that out later, but that had a dramatic effect all the way down the field. Claridge leads Nieva, who leads Laus Stolsen up at the front.
I think it was John Olsen there at the beginning that got shoved off drivers right as we take a look. Laus Olsen defending a little bit down the inside, headed down into this sharp turn 5 for the first time. Careful on the brakes not to overstep your limit on the first lap.
Yeah, so far everybody's been pretty good into Adelaide. Oh, but somebody outbraked themselves and slid sideways. Looks like Yuri Giesen got hit by that driver. There you can see it on screen now. The rest of them all trying to navigate their way through the stopped cars. Somebody there off track completely.
Yeah, Yuri Giesen did not have a good time. Same with Brad Cathcart's got suspension damage back there, but we're going to jump right up to this lead battle right here, because Laus Olsen is all over the back of Jorge Nieva, challenging for second place.
Don't believe we've seen Laus Olsen take a win in the 49s. I'll double check on the stats on that. Nieva definitely hasn't taken a win before. And then Laus Olsen, or Mick Claridge, has had many. In fact, he's the winningest driver in the series. So as he leads the way, it looks like he does have pretty good pace over the others, because it's 2 seconds at the line on that first lap.
Pretty dominating pace, but I can't say that I'm surprised. We've seen Mick Claridge in that red machine kind of do this in weeks past, just dominate these races, but really interested to see what Laus Olsen is able to do with Jorge Nieva. Also, that Ben Zocco car already up a couple spots, up into the top 10, finding his way, trying to get around Bill Tyler.
They see him sitting in ninth, has gained 2 from where he gridded up. Bill Tyler just in front of him. Long braking zones in these cars, but he's not quite close enough, even though he's going to take a little bit of a look down into that tight little hairpin. And then it weaves back and forth. And this really demonstrates what I was talking about before. Whoa, we got an accident down there. That's Rodriguez. Turned around, and he's got somebody with him. Is that Glenn Becker? I think it is.
Unfortunate, because I was watching Joan Rodriguez there, and he was having such a... Oh, gosh, and then you see the heavy damage there on Glenn Becker's car. I was going to say Rodriguez was up 10-some spots already, having a good start.
So here's the replay. Let's see if we can figure out what exactly happened. A few drivers trying to position themselves, and putting a wheel into the grass is not going to help you slow down. So, of course, the 20 just couldn't keep out of the gearbox of the 30. 28, sorry.
Looks like Laust Olsen is officially around Jorge Nieva. He's going to take away that second place, headed down into the final chicane to complete what is lap number 2. I'll be interested to see the pace of that yellow and blue number 8 car.
In fact, he's one of our onboard cams here today, is Laust Olsen. So doing a fantastic job down there as we hop on board with him. Looking forward at what is probably a welcome clear bit of racetrack. Pucker factor is slightly there, so maybe a bit of nerves being this far up the order, especially since he's had some bad luck in this series for quite some time. Probably wants to see that change. We'll see if he can, knocking on wood. He's not out of the woods yet, as Nieva is close behind. In fact, Sebastian Tixier, who's probably upset about missing his second lap, is trying to make up for that. In fact, he just blasts past Jorge Nieva behind them.
It's Kenton stacked up behind Laust Olsen. It's Sebastian Tixier, Jorge Nieva, Xavier Sanchez, and Wade Sheedy. All these 5 cars stacked up right here. But I think Laust Olsen is going to start to run away and also bring Xavier Sanchez with them. Be interesting to see how these other cars, because it looks like the number 4 Sanchez has more speed than Nieva. Unfortunately, Nieva's qualifying position, he's not holding it up with the race pace.
Yeah, it's always a bit of a different skill between those two, and sometimes not everybody has both. Oh, look at this already. Sebastian is kind of poking his nose here and there on Laust Olsen. Behind them, though, Nieva once again under threat. This time it's Xavier Sanchez.
Sanchez taking a look, realized he didn't quite have the opportunity there, but he's filling the mirrors, saying, hey, Jorge, I'm right here. Let's get up on the wick. I want to go win this thing.
Absolutely, and coming down across the line to complete another lap now. Still seeing Sebastian Tixier getting awful close to Laust Olsen here and there, as he may be setting himself up for Adelaide potentially, because it's hard to pass on these first few corners. Let's see what kind of launch he gets off of this right-hander.
It's all about the setup, like you're talking about, and he's in the slipstream behind Laust Olsen right now. We'll see if he can do anything. I don't think he's quite close enough yet, but he did make a big move last lap on Nieva.
And a little bit of a peek behind them as Sanchez is just seeing if he could do something on Nieva. Stays tight to the inside, but just not meant to be, at least for now. No change in order here from second down to that 6th position with Wade Sheedy at the end of the train. We ride on board with Tixier, following in the tire tracks, seeing if he can maybe set himself up for something into Imola potentially. Going to take a wild dive for that, especially with that rise right into the braking, so not looking likely here. And as they plunge through that right-left chicane, he's going to have to stay patient for a little bit longer.
Xavier Sanchez just had a beautiful pass on Jorge Nieva down the inside of what I believe is turn 7-8 chicane. And now that he's in front of Nieva, I expect him to go up and close it up on Sanchez.
And as they come out of the final corner, it does seem like there's a number of spots where Seb is just so much quicker. We keep seeing him gain and up at the top, just to discourage both of them. Claridge just set a faster lap than his qualifying lap up there. That is unbelievable this early in the race as well, when he's still heavy with fuel.
I think it just shows how comfortable he is in these cars, and here he is just kind of out front leading the way. That's not Laust Olsen in second place behind him. That's actually lapped cars. He's 5.5 seconds up the road from our second place runner.
Yeah, still another look from Tixier, but nothing doing for now. Not sure that we're going to get anything out of this for the time being, so why don't we take a glance at that opening lap melee and see if we can unravel what happened. I think it was John Olsen. Was that the one that first spun?
I believe it was. It was John Olsen on the start there near the beginning, and I want to go get to this replay, but I just have a feeling we're going to cut to it right now here on this start. This is a standing start, and I think he just got hip-checked from the left side, Joe.
All right, so, yeah, here we go. Here's a good angle from the front. So the number 3 car is the one that you're going to be looking for. I think he started, where did he start exactly?
He was on driver's right here.
Yeah.
There it is. The 4 came over.
And it was the 11, actually. So John was just in the wrong place, wrong time. The 11 is Neil Kemp. So Kemp is the one that got hit to the side. And then everything after that was basically kind of a trickle-down effect. Like you like to describe, Joey, dominoes. Then they unfortunately fell in a bad way for everybody behind them.
Yeah, and we're watching these replays to see exactly what happened. I think it was the 4 that came over, and yeah, you just see the domino effect, and when it rains, it falls. And Laust Olsen, to report on the racetrack, has fallen all the way back to 5th.
Wow, and there's some incidents before they even reached that wreck, as I guess drivers were trying to check up, and some did not get the memo. But Laust Olsen, yeah, down to 5th place now in that number 8, continuing to lose out on this start after he began all the way up on the front row. Another driver like Nieves seeming to struggle just a little bit, but Jorge is still in 3rd where he qualified, so not doing too bad. Just unfortunately couldn't keep up with Tixier, who did finally get by. But because he had to pass so many cars, Seb is discovering why qualifying is so important here. And, side by side now between Sanchez and Nieva. And plunging into Imola, it's going to go to Sanchez for the time being. Nieva behind Olsen, almost under attack from Wade Sheedy briefly.
I'm going to give props to Jorge Nieva because his pace was definitely struggling earlier on, but something happened up front to shuffle this all up, and now he's showing some good racing moves, showing that he does want to be up at the front and try to win this race.
The point I was trying to make earlier before we got some more battling, Tixier's 7.5 seconds behind Claridge. He's got a lot of work to do, and I got to think, if he hadn't have had to make those passes, it seems like his pace is relatively close to Mick's.
Yes, it's only been separated by a 10th or 2 each lap, and watching these cars, it's actually pretty impressive because occasionally you see purple sectors pop up, and it's always at these front 5 cars, and they are definitely on a charge.
As we continue to follow with Nieva here behind Sanchez, trying to plunge down into Adelaide. A little bit of puff of smoke from the car ahead, just as the tires get locked up, trying to steer around that tight little hairpin. More lap traffic. That's Neil Kemp, interestingly, who was able to repair the car and get back out there and salvage what he can of this day.
Good to see that from Neil Kemp. Yeah, a few laps down, but laps are laps. It's always nice to enhance the notebook, and you can learn something from any race. Get back out there and get going with your friends.
So as it sits right now, Claridge leads, Tixier 2nd, Sanchez 3rd, Nieva and Olsen 4th and 5th. As on screen, we watch the 32 in a nice little battle here. Hopping on board, looking back, we're going to see Cam Porter try and hold his position.
Love riding on board with Cam Porter here. He's getting pressure from Rolly Wallbank directly behind him, and this is a potential passing area. That chicane is a very narrow funnel, but looks like Cam Porter is going to hold on for now.
Ooh, and a good exit. Absolutely drops Rolly on that one. And I think something happened to Nieva because I see him dropping down the tower there. Not exactly sure, but he's all the way down in 10th now. And this is coming into the first couple corners. That is Grau just behind him. I'm going to go check and see if I can figure out what went down.
He spun in the final chicane. I think we're going to get a replay of it right now. He was all by himself right in front of Laust Olsen here. We're going to see him get down hard onto the brakes, and these cars really jump through the final set of curbs, and unfortunately, he lost it on the second curb.
Here it is right here. Whoa! Well, that first one didn't help him at all. And yeah, when he clattered into the second one, there was very little control as it sat. And it does look like Olsen's going to lose another position as we watch this replay. I can report Wade Sheedy, the latest to demote him, down to 5th, though, because he gained a position from going by the spinning Nieva in the process. So it evens out, but Olsen would probably rather be up in that 4th spot.
Wade Sheedy's having a very good race, up 4 positions, while Laust Olsen is trying to gather everything back up in his race. And I don't think it's affecting him at all, but I do see a little bit of front left damage. Well, really front end damage on the Laust Olsen machine. And I think that's probably where he fell back so far. I don't think it's affecting his pace.
Simone Poncri just in front of them. Oh, and is unfortunately going to check up Wade Sheedy coming through the chicane. Doesn't seem like Olsen can capitalize in that situation. Just a little too far back and had to check up on his own. They do need to watch out. You talked about Ben Zocco moving up the order earlier. Well, he's up to 6th now.
You took the words right out of my mouth, Joe. Yeah, Ben Zocco now on the back of Laust Olsen. But check this out. Laust with a fantastic exit out of turn 3. He's going to be side by side with Wade Sheedy going into turn 5, which is this heavy braking zone. He's just got to establish himself on the inside of the track, which he does. Laust should claim this position. Watch out for Ben Zocco. Wow, almost sticks his nose in there. Look at the over-under.
Wade Sheedy back side by side. These cars can't really bang wheels very easily. They're getting awful close down to the braking of Nürburgring. But it looks like Olsen has to give way. Or does he? He's going to try and come back down into the braking. Is behind them. Ove Trangrade suddenly appears. And he's trying to go around the outside of Ben Zocco.
Really good racing move from Ove Trangrade. He saw side-by-side battling, tried to take advantage of Zocco, but they stay. Sheedy, Olsen, Zocco, Trangrade, all battling for what is 4th place.
Sheedy's trying to run away, though. He's using this to his advantage where possible to put some distance between himself and the number 8, as behind them, Trangrade drops off as well. Richard Watson looking like he's starting to hoover them up as well. Another big dive to the inside from Zocco, but nothing doing into Nice.
I think that Zocco has a lot of confidence in that blue and yellow car. He's in the number 6 following Laust Olsen. He's moved up. What I see here is a few spots already, and I think he's got his eyes set on a podium today.
And that was Lycée corner. Apologies, as they now go through Estoril and up to the long stretch along Gulf here. Very swift corner in these cars. It is fast in every car, but others don't have quite the sketchiness that these do through some of the swift bends. Oh, Olsen goes a little too deep. Oh, and all 4 or 5 of them are going to pile in, and everybody behind scatters to try and get around. I did not expect it to go quite that way.
I think that was just an incident here in the sim, because once Laust made contact, all of a sudden it was like those cars hit a concrete wall and everybody was stopped right in the middle of the racetrack.
I've never quite seen something like that. It was just absolutely comedic, because usually cars kind of scatter off the track and everybody manages to get around. But look at this. Just everybody in a straight line into a pile, quite literally.
Yeah, and I can't see who quite snuck through there. I think it was maybe Richard Watson, who was able to get it slowed down enough. When we're riding on board with here, just watch the calamity in front.
Oh, man. Oh, good job in that situation. Wow. Wow, just enough that he could get out of the way and steer to the inside. And Watson says, thank you, I'll take 4th, guys.
You know, usually we see target fixation happen on not the racing line, but it was almost a track blockage, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's just one of the strangest incidents I think I've ever seen. That promotes Bill Tyler up to 5th, and Nieva back up to 6th position. He's still down 3, though, so he's not been having the best of time there. Marco Salgado and wow, Farron Grau's up 12 spots into 7th. He's having a heck of a race.
You mentioned it, up 12 spots, Farron Grau, and he's actually on the back of Nieva now, who continues to fall. He's trying to gather himself back up, and a couple other big movers that I've kept my eye on. Cam Porter up 12, Jack Spickett up 21 positions from his starting grid of 37 spots, and then also Don Peak, shout out at him, up 19.
All the way up to 21st position. And I was actually talking to him earlier this week as he was practicing, and he said there are some very tricky parts to this track. Most notably, doesn't like the exit out of the hairpin coming up. Adelaide was noting that there's a big dip coming out of there. Let's watch and see what he does to try and avoid that here in a second, because he said it took him a while to really kind of figure out how to take that one quickly, and should be right out of here. Yeah, I think that was it right there.
Yeah, it's almost bigger than a bump. It's almost like a little over crest, and with the acceleration that these cars can produce, yeah, I could see wheel spin being a big issue there.
Jack Spickett up into 16th spot, gaining 21. He's chasing on the likes of Rolly Wallbank, who we know is a little bit damaged from that unfortunate incident that we witnessed. He's got Gary Quellen up in front of him, and one of our cams, Cam Porter, is leading the train.
Yeah, this is a good run from Jack Spickett. I mentioned up 21 positions, and the reason why I wanted to highlight him here is Rolly Wellbank, Gary Quellen, and Cam Porter are all for position right on the racetrack. That means he could get up to 13th, even 12th position here.
Yeah, there's a lot on the table, but he's got to stay patient, I think, because it could so easily go wrong, as we've seen. New track, I mean, that also means new unexpected issues that we need to watch out for. And it looks like there was a little bit of contact. I think that was the likes of Quellen. Oh, and it damaged the suspension of Cam Porter.
Yeah, ran up the back of Cam Porter's car, and he tried to accelerate off of the corner. We're going to catch a replay here. This is Cam Porter, and you're going to see does nothing wrong. Unfortunately, gets hit from behind going into this turn 5 braking zone.
Yeah, I mean, this is looking like it's going to be a theme. Once again, if you get just a little bit into that grass, I guess the lesson is, if you're going to have to make a bit of a dive to save the car, go to the inside, right?
Yes, and these cars tend to move around a lot on the brakes, which doesn't help things.
No doubt. I'm sure, yeah, they're pretty squirrely if you're on the limit, going from one of the fastest parts of the track down to the slowest corner of the whole thing. And it went wrong for the car ahead and not the car behind in this situation. Tixier is gaining for what it's worth. I don't know if it's going to be enough. They're on lap 13 already, but he's cut it down to 4.7 seconds. And you have to wonder how much of that is Mick Claridge also managing that gap.
I'm looking at the lap times, and it's interesting because Mick Claridge has fallen off the pace just a little bit, but I think it could also be with traffic. We're going to get the lap time comparison. You see Mick sometimes giving up times, but in the last lap, he actually gained over half a second back, which is a significant amount. But, Joe, are you seeing that lap 10? 3.5 seconds?
He must have hit traffic, yeah. Okay, yeah, I mean, that's exactly the amount of time that is different right there. So seems like Mick maybe had either a mistake or someone just kind of held him up slightly. That car that we saw blow an engine was Bjorn Ackerman. Thankfully was able to get out of the way of the cars ahead in time. And yeah, Ackerman just saying that he had 10 minutes of repairs from the start, and then unfortunately the engine couldn't even hold up after they were able to wrench on the car to get it back out there. So he's done for the day from here. This race is honestly zipped by. We're down to the last quarter here in a bit.
We are, and this is the battle for third place. I'm sorry, this is Jorge Nieva as well as Bill Tyler on the racetrack. This is the battle for fifth place. Jorge Nieva trying to gather it back up. Looks like he's got a little bit more pace than Bill Tyler, and exiting out of turn 3. This is where we've seen so many cars run wide, given opportunity to the vehicle behind. Looks like Nieva is in the slipstream, might be close enough to take a peek down into turn 5.
might be close enough. It's going to have to take a bit of a dive, but looks like he's not willing to risk it this time as they both edge it around that apex and then try to get onto the throttle. Car squirming a little bit for Jorge. I'm sure he's trying to put the power down as soon as possible without spinning it out of that tight corner.
It can be really tricky to do, and what drivers often reference as the egg under the throttle, Joe. Don't step on that egg too hard, you'll crack it.
Yeah, so far, Nieva has at least managed to keep it on the road, but again, has not been able to keep up with the pace as qualifying seemed to imply up to now. Tyler's on the reverse course. He's up 5 positions, having qualified in 10th. Now, that said, we did see a huge pile up in front of him, and he's going to get hit from behind as Nieva just tips him, and he's trying to let him back, it looks like. I think he's trying to redress the position.
I love to see that. Jorge Nieva clearly did not mean to get into Bill Tyler. He raised his hand. He said, "That's my mistake. I'm sorry. I'm slowing down. Come back by. Let's actually have a good fight."
So good to see that sportsmanship. Unfortunately for Nieva, that now means that he's got Grau right on top of him and Salgado, and Farron is another one that has just been picking his way past a number of incidents and slower cars and has gained 12 spots. This is Salgado, who's up 7. And he's a little farther behind. He's got to try and get himself closer if he wants to attack on these 3.
Pretty good little battle here that it's condensed up now because Farron Grau has caught that pack. And here we're looking at Mark Antonio Salgado, another name that we haven't mentioned at all. Oh no, looks like Farron Grau gets in really deep. There's going to be contact there between him and Bill Tyler. That's going to allow the number 6 machine to go through. Nieva.
Well, yeah, Nieva got through, and Salgado is up into 6th now with, yeah. Well, scratch what I said. I guess the inside isn't safe either. It's just a bowling ball, unfortunately, in the 5, who had a great race going. Bill Tyler has been sent to pit lane.
Yeah, really unfortunate there. Farron Grau, I think, just got in too deep. You saw him stand on the brake pedal, lock up the brakes, but ultimately had nowhere to go once he was in too deep.
Just looks like it is supremely difficult to find the right brake marker in these cars. It's such a slow corner. Well, the new track is certainly proving to be a bit of a challenge because the attrition rate is pretty high. That said, we got some drivers that have jumped back out onto the course and have managed to get themselves rolling once again, but they're going to finish up multiple laps down if they do see the checkered flag. And Claridge has responded for what it's worth. He is 6 seconds now ahead of Tixier.
Jack Spickett continues to move up through the field. He's now up into the 11th spot, passing that damaged car of Farron Grau. Really impressive run from that number 19 car. And the other one that I wanted to mention, Joe, you said his name when we were doing the championship point standings. David Rossi, who's moved up into the F1 standings, having a really good race, up 7 positions, finds himself in the 7th spot.
And that seems to be his MO. He's not the greatest of qualifiers usually, but just keeps the car together and gains a lot of spots. I'm pretty sure that's how he took multiple F2 championships, is just staying out of trouble when all of his rivals seem to get tangled up with each other. And he picks up valuable positions and no one is able to catch him. Speaking of which, Claridge is not going to be able to get the points lead back from Tixier this round if they finish as is. But obviously he's going to be cutting in on the Singapore driver with this win. The question is how many races Mick will be able to run, since usually he's out traipsing around the world. Speaking of which, we're going to have our next episode next week. Obviously didn't have one this week of Where is Mick, so make sure and tune in here on GSRC to see where Mick winds up this time.
Well, I know that last race that Mick competed in, I believe it was the Chicago Street Circuit. He was very proud of his victory donuts. We'll see if he makes it all the way to the checkered flag here this race. Still got 3 more laps to go, and let me tell you, if you start to celebrate too soon, those racing gods, they notice. They watch every single moment when you're out there on the racetrack.
Yeah, you don't want a Mansell moment out there, waving to the crowd and stall the engine up to the finish line. So Claridge, I think, knows his way around. I don't think he's going to do something silly like that. Famous last words, I'm sure. But with about 3 laps to go when he reaches the line, at this point, his biggest concern is just keeping his mistakes out and also avoiding any traffic, which seems to have its own perils. We've seen a lot of cars off track scattered throughout this race, so hopefully nobody spins in front of him.
Well, when you have 40-some cars enter a race, I don't doubt that there's going to be random cars littered off track. And taking a look, we're down to, 16 cars on the lead lap? Is that what I'm seeing? Roughly 17 as they all cycle through. Mick has done a fantastic job with the pace out front to really eliminate a lot of these contenders early.
Yeah, 18 officially I'm seeing that are still running on the lead lap right now. So he's just been plugging along, and anybody that can't keep up with his pace, unfortunately, going to get those blue flags soon enough. Gary Ho is up 4 positions into ninth. The other driver, I believe, that is contributing to our Singapore results. So Tixier is going to be giving them P2 points, but Gary Ho today is there as backup should something happen to that number 1. But right now, he's more concerned with Robert Plumley vying for that 8th position.
Robert Plumley is another name that we haven't mentioned much today. He's up, I believe, 9 positions so far into that 8th spot, having a really good run. And been watching this Gary Ho, Robert Plumley battle. It's pretty good, and I sound like a broken record, but it looks like Jack Spickett is lining up another pass. I don't know if he's going to be close enough this lap, but maybe up into the 11th spot with Ernesto Romero in front of him.
That would be 26 positions if he could get that one. Just an unbelievable climb from that number 19 machine. Plumley here down into what has been Calamity Corner at Adelaide, and this time, thankfully, they're able to get away with it and nobody running into one another. Out of there into Nürburgring, a swift back and forth, and then it's breaking down into the 180. Long left-hander with a fair bit of camber, as you can see, to help them try to steer their way through. David Rossi is just in front, up in 7th. If they don't fight too much, maybe they could catch up to that 18 car.
It's possible, and something I'm noticing on both Plumley and Gary Ho, they both have had damage on the front end of their machine. Once again, I don't think it's affecting their pace, but always something you got to consider as a driver, not to overstep the limit again when you've had those incidents.
Absolutely. And yeah, there's a good example of what I was talking about with the lap traffic sometimes being a little bit of a hazard and in the way. Got to make sure that everybody is very aware of where they sit so that you don't tangle with one another. Back to Spickett. You were talking about him trying to catch up to Romero. I think Romero, no, that's a lapped car in front of him, actually. Excuse me. I thought that was going to be for position. That is Farron Grau.
Yeah, it's Farron Grau. He's back out there after his incidents, a couple laps down from the rest of the field, and he's actually separated this battle between Spickett and Romero just a touch.
All right, so we'll play the role of buffer for the time being. We're down to 2 laps to go. Actually, make that white flag coming out soon for Mick Claridge, who has increased his gap back up to 7 seconds once again. So Claridge is just duly taking care of business here. About to take, I think, his 3rd win of the season. Yes, his 3rd win of the season if he can just bring it around one more lap. There's the white flag as he crosses the line. Is Grissinger here in the meantime on Rolly Wallbank, who might have a damaged car.
I think he might. He's trying to hang on to what is the 13th position on the racetrack. And another name we haven't mentioned, Mats Linden in 17th, up 22 positions. I always love these big movers, Joe.
Yeah, that is one of the things I love to see as drivers that might not have the raw one-lap pace, but they know how to race out there. They are going to put their all into it to try and get the best result they can, even if they have to pass a few or scalp a few positions from attrition throughout the race. Oh, another car off circuit there at the very end of the lap as they also now take the white flag. Claridge is already halfway through that last lap himself.
He does have 1 or 2 lapped cars in front of him. You see it way up the screen, a couple corners in front of him. I don't think it's going to be an issue. Relatively simple Just hit your marks these final few corners. Don't overstep the limit like we've seen so many competitors do on the brakes.
Looks to me like he's got it pretty well under control, diving it back across into Chateau d'Eau. And then really all it is Laissez from here. Just the hairpin and the chicane to complete the lap. And first part, that looks nice and tidy to me. Just a little off the apex. He's got 8 seconds. He can spare a little bit of that. Checkered flag and a win for Mick Claridge at the first visit to Magny-Cours for the Grand Prix Legends.
Can't say I'm surprised, but another fantastic day for that red number 2 machine. See Sebastian Tixier here come across the line second, and Xavier Sanchez rounding out the podium.
Richard Watson, probably glad that he was able to avoid that crazy mess down into Adelaide partway through the race. Going to be just off the podium, but still an excellent run to get himself into fourth here. The Texan now wrapping it up. Nieva, unfortunately, couldn't keep that pace up from qualifying into the race. Still a top 5 to help him out in that championship hunt.
You mentioned there Jorge Nieva coming home with the top 5 finish. Important for the points for him to gather it back up after the unfortunate beginning to the race.
Michael Grissinger still both on the attack and defense. So is somebody off there? I think that's celebrations here from Mick Claridge. Yeah, he's just burning it down. Rolly Wallbank just went off, and he's going to lose 2 positions right at the final corner. Grissinger and Eschner sneaking past.
You gotta feel for Rolly Wallbank. He was holding off Grissinger and Eschner and just into the gravel in the final couple turns.
Well, that's going to wrap up our finishers, so let's head to a quick break. We'll come back with the unofficial results as well as driver interviews, so stick around. Welcome back to Magny-Cours. Our first time visiting for the Grand Prix Legends Series sees Mick Claridge take that maiden win at this French circuit ahead of the Frenchman, Sébastien Tixier. Probably mad at himself for missing out on that second qualifying lap, because probably could have kept Mick honest if not challenged him for that win. Sanchez does get a third place. I believe that's his 9th ever podium in this series. Richard Watson, P4, was then followed by Jorge Nieva, who gets his valuable top 5. Mark Salgado was 6th today, David Rossi P7, and Robert Plumley in 8th. Gary Ho climbing up to a 9th position, is then followed by Paul Wilson, rounding out your top 10.
In 11th place, Ernesto Romero. Great recovery after technically being airborne on the green flag start-finish on the first lap. Jack Spickett, our biggest mover, in the 12th position. Michael Grissinger there, 13th. Christian Eschner and Rolly Wallbank round out top 15. Janne Lehman there, 16th. Gary Quellen, Mats Linden, Don Peak, and Andrew Eng in the 20th spot.
Well, Farron Grau had it all going his way until it didn't, and wound up 21st instead of in the top 10. Douglas Nelson, 22nd, followed by Jan Steven in 23rd. Nolan Rodriguez managed to gain quite a few spots here from 30th to 24th, as Cam Porter is another one that fell victim to the Adelaide hairpin, which saw so many pileups. He was only 25th. Then it's Tobias Harnvey, 26th, and Back Row Bob, 27th. Bill Tyler also tangled up in that big pileup we saw down at Adelaide. He was only 28th, and Gabriel Montiel, 29th. Neil Kemp was 30th today.
All of these competitors having lots of problems early on, several laps down. John Olsen, Wade Sheedy, Jeff Saunders, Glenn Becker, Laust Olsen, who was having such a good beginning part of the race there, finds himself 35th. Another front runner, Ben Zoko, in that early pileup. Ove Trengrade as well. Simone Puncree there in 38th. Bjorn Ackerman, and then Brad Cathcart. And then you see the last three involved in the start: Robert Pongrazi, Steve Morris, and Yuri Geeson.
That takes us to our winner here today, Mick Claridge, managing to scamper away from everybody. And Mick, the only really thing that we saw that was a mistake we didn't see, there was a lap where you lost 3 seconds. Can you enlighten us as to what happened?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I went into 180 steering to the right, basically because I had to. I lost the back end really badly. And normally with my rig, I can normally catch them. But it was one of those ones where I needed to put it full lock to save it. And I did that. And then my hand got stuck on my leg to try and save it when it went the other way, as it was doing its tank slapper thing. And I'd sort of just called it. And I was thinking to myself, I hope they didn't see that, because that would have looked really stupid if they did. So I shouldn't have said any of that, should I?
Yeah, no, we didn't catch any of that. There were so many battles, we didn't have time to really go check and see what cost you the time. That said, it seemed like once Sebastian was able to clear a lot of the cars that he had to pass to get up into second, he seemed pretty even on pace. If it wasn't for him making a mistake in qualifying and starting with you, do you think it would have been quite the battle between you two?
Absolutely, because I knew he was quick from day one when the track opened, because he always puts a nice quick lap on the Discord, so everyone can see it and think, what should we do now? And I knew he did that over 2 laps, so that's what he always does. And it took me about a few goes to sort of match it, but that was on 5-lap stints, and that makes a lot of difference because there's a lot more grip in the car when you do that. So I knew it was going to be a close one if he was with me. But once I made the mistake, I thought, all it takes is another slowdown or a slowdown, and we'll be right together. And I wouldn't have got away from him. He would have been too quick. So it would have been a good one.
Well, this is the second of the 3 new tracks to the series. We go to the Charlotte Oval next time out. Do you think you can make it best 2 out of 3, even though you didn't get to show up for Sandown?
I'm so gutted I missed Sandown. That is such a brilliant track. I love that sort of style of track, the old school stuff. But I'm not sure I'll make Charlotte, because I might do, because it doesn't really take much practice to get up to speed there. So I'll see. I'm getting ready for the ride now, Joe. I'm going in 2 weeks, so my brain's sort of switching off of iRacing and getting back into bike riding.
Well, we'll look forward to seeing updates on that. But congratulations on your third win of the season, and hopefully we'll get to talk to you a bit more before you go.
Yep. Cheers, mate.
That was Mick Claridge finishing in the top spot today. Joey has caught up with one of those that unfortunately fell victim to Adelaide, and that is Cam Porter.
Cam Porter, not necessarily the day that you were hoping for, but finishing 25th spot. Take us through the race in your eyes.
Well, I managed to survive that lap 1 carnage. Wow. I had to check up at the start to avoid hitting a few cars ahead of me, and someone from behind me hit me, and I saw them go airborne. I don't know who that was. And then I managed to get through lap 1. I saw cars flying everywhere. It was pretty zany, and then had a fun race with Rowley Wallbank for a little while. I managed to get by him, and I was actually up behind Paul Wilson. I was up to 13th, I think. So I went from 25th on the grid up to 13th. I was so stoked. I was so excited, and then unfortunately got hit by another car in the hairpin, and that ruined my suspension. Thankfully, it only had about 2.5 minutes worth of repairs, and I was able to finish the race. But kind of frustrated first half.
Yeah, well, and we saw Gary Quellen there run up the back of you going into turn 5, and we actually saw a lot of competitors have issues going into turn 5. Talk us through that corner a little bit. It seemed like the cars just overall were very nervous, and everybody had trouble stopping there.
I was making sure that I was braking in plenty of time. Maybe that's why I caught Gary out in that way, because I was making sure that I wasn't overshooting that corner like a lot of people were, and so I think that really helped me in some ways to avoid a lot of the carnage happening around me. I was able to outbrake Rowley going in there, but I knew I had a little bit of room left, because usually I brake just a little bit early, so I made sure I didn't overshoot it. So when I was passing Rowley there, I knew I had a little bit extra I could brake, so it went okay. And thanks to Rowley for racing me clean and fair.
Yeah, well, and I think that Gary actually got in the grass there, and that's exactly why he got into the back of you. We saw a lot of competitors, when they got on the brakes, the car definitely moved around and got in too deep. And unfortunately, yeah, you had that suspension damage. And taking a look at the next race, which is going to be the Charlotte Oval there, how do you feel on confidence on that racetrack?
I actually like that racetrack. I think that's an unpopular opinion. I enjoy Charlotte Oval. I usually do well there, actually. Unfortunately, I'm going to be doing the Daytona 24-hour next weekend, so I don't think I'll be able to participate. But it just depends on when my team wants to sets up our schedule for the races. I'm not sure I'll be able to participate.
Well, good luck in the Daytona 24 or whatever you are racing in the simulator, Cam Porter. And before I let you go, is there anybody you want to say hi to?
Shout out to my brother Tim, who couldn't make the race today because he had an appointment. So hopefully we'll see him back next week.
That was Cam Porter, not having the day that he wanted, coming home in the 25th spot.
Well, that is going to wrap us up. So we want to give a big thank you to the Lotus 49 community for bringing us back for another season of coverage. And thanks to the team today, Rob, Joey, and Dougie. Make sure to check out our social media website and our merchandise store. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss a moment. As we mentioned, next race is off to Charlotte for the oval track. They usually have an oval race once a season in this series. That'll be January 21st at 8:30 a.m. Eastern. Be sure to check out our other broadcasts, because up next, we have the Camel GT Series going to Hockenheim at noon Eastern. Until next time, though, race clean, race hard. We'll see you on the track.